Hey friends, it's that time again. It's Tuesday night, time for our Worship Express. Welcome back. For those of you who have been tuning in each Tuesday, the 1st of January, I kind of made a declaration that this year for me was going to focus on the word trust. And I feel like I've been intentional about doing that, about trying to do that, and about trying to add that into each Tuesday night message. So tonight is no different. Tonight, typically in the month of February, what I have done is asked Bo to join me on Tuesday nights, and he's not able to do that this month. So I'm still going to bring the topic of trust into this, but also in the month of February, I'm going to be talking about love and the different angles of all of that. Tonight is going to be pretty interesting in my opinion, but I want to pose a question to you. What if the things that we love don't love us? And I'll explain what I mean by that. How do we get away from things that are no longer serving us? And by things, it can mean ideas, perspectives, it can mean things too. Sometimes things can take up a lot of space in our existence, in our areas, in our homes, in our minds. Sometimes that can weigh us down, especially if they're no longer serving us. What I mean by ideas, sometimes if you see somebody who looks like they've got it all together and they're spending a lot of money and they're doing a lot of shopping and it makes it look like that's what you should be doing, maybe that idea is no longer serving you. Maybe that is not the idea that you really need to be taking along with you as you're getting older. Then perspective, my life will be better if at the age of 18, I know exactly what I want to do. I'm here to tell you that's not true. It's nonsense. There is no way that I would have thought at the age of 18 that I would be doing what I'm doing right now, which is serving God and serving my family in a way, in a capacity that only God's allowing me to do. And perspective is everything. And then we already talked about things. Sometimes those things that we bring along with us no longer are serving us. So this is a term that I just recently learned about. I think it's been around for a while, but right now we are in a season in the world that a lot of people will refer to as cuffing season. And what that means is it's during the cold months. So starting in the fall and moving through the holidays into going through about Valentine's Day probably, single people will connect with people and start a relationship just so they won't be alone, just so they have someone in those cold months, just so they will not feel lonely and desperate. And I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, I'm just saying it is a thing. There is an actual definition that I looked it up, and this is what it says. Cuffing season is a season where, because of loneliness and desperation, you settle for a relationship that is beneath your standards. And if you are a child of God, which most of you who are watching this, I would assume are, there is a standard. God has given you a standard, and that standard is you are loved. And while you're going through your journey, and you are in relationships and you are not feeling loved, or you are feeling like this just isn't what God has for you, maybe this is a time when you might be settling. And sometimes that's really hard to accept. What I learned a while back is that relationships are actually less about people and more about the patterns that we have and that we bring into a relationship. I have shared my personal stories in the past about relationships when I was younger that I chose to be in that probably weren't the best ones for me. And I know that because I have patterns in my life. And way back then, I know that one of my patterns was being a people pleaser, being a little bit passive aggressive. I might still do that a little bit. Just kind of being more reserved and not speaking up, not speaking my mind. which in turn was attracting people who weren't really like that, but that wanted to take advantage of those patterns of my situation, of my personality. It wasn't until I was in my early 30s and I went through the graduate program, Marriage and Family Therapy, to become a therapist that I realized that this is a pattern I'm stuck in. This is something that is not benefiting me. And when I look back, it's also a time in my life when I was not within the parameters, within the boundary that God had given me for my life. And I was outside of those parameters. I wasn't walking with him, but I can 100% guarantee you he was with me. I just wasn't paying attention. I wasn't pursuing a relationship with God. So my standard that God had set for me had fallen short. And then I got some knowledge. I had more of a relationship with God, still even now, still working on even a stronger relationship with God because I'm listening. But those are the things that I learned. And adulting can be really hard, especially when you have to learn hard lessons like that. And it's hard to know and recognize those things. But once we know God's will for our lives, we can change our behavior. We can change our mind. We can change the patterns that we keep blaming on somebody else. It's like I said, the relationship is less about the person and more about the patterns. And once you realize that, it can be life-changing. You know, sometimes I will share with our youth group or with my own kids even, just friendships can be rough, and friendships will come and go in our lives. And a lot of times what feels like rejection to us is actually God's protection. Because if those friends are outside of the parameters or the boundary that God has given you for your life, and you start to head that way, it's not going to feel right. But if you stay within the parameters that God has given you for the path with him, but your friends are out here, it feels like rejection. But it's actually God protecting you from a situation that could be really hurtful. And sometimes we have to learn that the hard way. Most times we do. But sometimes if someone can help you and you'll allow them to help you realize those things, then it can be beneficial. It can be for your betterment. The last thing that I want to say is, you know, I feel like every message that is given, there can be something taken from the Lion King and put into a message about our lives and our relationship with God. And of course, tonight is no different. This conversation reminds me of the scene in The Lion King where Simba decides to kind of go outside the boundary or the perimeter that Mufasa had set for him, because his curiosity had gotten the best of him, and he wanted to go to that elephant graveyard. And what happened when he got there? He was attacked, or almost attacked, by hyenas. And it wasn't until Mufasa kind of came up behind him and scared the hyenas away. But because he stepped outside the parameter of protection that Mufasa had given him, is when he kind of lost his strength. He lost the confidence that he had that Mufasa had been giving him. And in this analogy, God is the person who's giving us our boundary and the perimeters. But our parents also do that for us. You know, if I see, if my girls were little and I see them trying to rummage through the trash to find something to eat, I'm going to stop that because I know that's not safe. I've given them a parameter of, you know, what's healthy is to eat food that's on the table, right? Food that I know what's in it. I don't know what's in the trash. I don't want you eating food out of the trash can. But as a child, you don't always know that. You have to be taught those things. You know, sometimes when I look back on my life and the relationships that I've been in and the things that I've compromised or sacrificed to make a relationship work, it saddens me a little bit because I know I lost a little bit of myself, but I also learned a lot about what a standard should be. And when you realize that that standard is you are loved and God is wanting to protect you from certain situations, then it changes your mind. there's a scripture that I want to share with you. I know this is one of Bo's favorites. It's becoming one of mine, and it's in the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 2. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. That word pattern is in here. Friends, just remember that we have to trust God, and we have to trust his timing and his purpose for us. And if something doesn't feel right, it feels off, doesn't feel like it's God's plan for you, I would trust that feeling. This conversation is about trust, and it's about love. And, you know, the word love gets thrown around a lot. But just know that you are loved by God. You are loved by your parents. True friends who are for you and want to see you succeed and do well, those are friends that love you. And sometimes it's hard to talk about hard things, but with God, you can do that. And I just hope you guys are well. And I, you know, obviously this is a fun week at my school because it's Spirit Week for the Super Bowl that's happening on Sunday. So everyone's in a good mood and just, you know, hoping that we do well on Sunday with no injuries and just a good game. So anyway, with that being said, have a great week, you guys, and I will see you next time.